You shunned me, so what did you expect?
I did. I hung my head in shame.
Some witnesses in other places may be more strict on certain rules because it's not really that pertinent to their survival. Yeah. So I excelled academically. I was quite good at school.
You were very
So
good.
by the time I reached the end of
Mhm.
Revelation, everything I knew I had unlearned by myself. And one of the things that he kept, I think that bothered him, was the fact that his father was anointed and he was not.
I think the German missionary, he was very much for what I heard anyway afterwards was that he was very much pushing for her to get this fellowship.
Excitement and buzz around the brothers at Hillcrest and how they were doing exemplarily well despite them being in a boarding school.
But you can't do that, said one of the critics.
It doesn't bother me.
Really? Again? Really?
Look at that little enemy of God.
Somehow we dilly-and-dally takes us years, and we wonder why.
What are you waiting for?
So let's talk a bit briefly about your baptism. So you actually got baptized while at Hillcrest. Was it in the 11th grade that you ended up getting baptized?
Yes, it was. So I had started studying with a certain brother in the organization because obviously I was influenced by the environment around me. I wanted to ascend and be among the brothers,
Yes.
the elders.
Yes.
So I was influenced that way. Yeah. Now, ironically, I must mention this. My mother had always wanted me to wait until I was really sure I wanted to go this path because she said people do get this fellowship. You have to be sure that you want to get baptized. So, but for me, I pushed the agenda, especially when I went to the no, no, I need to get baptized
Yeah.
because there are all these extra things you can do. You're given authority and you can lead the brothers. And
Yes.
maybe I was a natural born leader. I don't know. But obviously, I aspired to that. So, wanting to do the right thing and get baptized and then have access to all these other privileges, it pushed me towards getting baptized. Yeah, that was what? Was it 2003? It's been so long.
It's a
Over 20
lifetime
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah, it's a lifetime ago.
Yeah, so I did
Yeah.
get baptized, and I think from then on, I started taking up more responsibilities in the organization, but not necessarily so in the organization, but more or less in Hillcrest among the Jehovah's Witnesses that we had there at Hillcrest. Hence the body of elders in Hillcrest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think this brings us naturally to the next thing I wanted to speak about. So the next thing I want to speak about is the Gilead graduate. So we there was a brother that came. I can't remember when exactly he came. I think he might have come when we were in grade 11. And what was interesting about this brother was he came to do A levels, so that's not mandatory in Zambia. You can go to university college without doing your A levels, but he came specifically to do these A levels at Hillcrest. And when he came, although he was still a youth, he was probably about maybe 17, 18. He was already a ministerial servant and he was regular pioneering. And I think there was a lot of admiration of him. I remember Habakkuk particularly admired this brother very much so, and I'm sure a lot of other Jehovah's Witnesses in that community admired him a lot. So what I think what we should do is let's play a clip from him graduating Gilead, which happened recently, I think in the last year or so. And then we'll chat a bit about him.
Please welcome our first guests, Brother and Sister Kunda from Zambia. We are so happy to have you with us on the Inside Story, Kena and Chilla. How long have you been serving in Zambia? And tell us about your assignments at the branch office.
So we have been serving at the branch for 5 years now, and we're both assigned to the Local Design Construction Department, LDC.
Beautiful. And here we see a picture of these smiling faces. There's you, both, and who are the three others in the picture?
Those three are three field representatives, and this was during a Kingdom Hall build that we visited. We really enjoyed that assignment.
Well, obviously you did. Look at those smiling faces. That's building Kingdom Halls. Kenneth, you're working with LDC. How many Kingdom Halls are needed in Zambia?
So in the next 5 years, we need 1,000 new Kingdom Halls.
1,000 Kingdom Halls. Now, that fast growth of Kingdom publishers, that's something that is marvelous to see. In fact, what is the ratio there in Zambia?
Currently, there are a little over 190,000 publishers in Zambia. So that would make it approximately 1 witness to 99 people.
1 to 99. That is just wonderful.
So that's Kena, who we have the claim of having been very closely affiliated with him while we were at Hillcrest. So Kena's progression in the organization has been quite rapid. He now serves on the Zambia branch committee. So he did all these secular things, as we were saying earlier on. So he came to a boarding school, did A-levels, which are not mandatory. He then went to university. He did some sort of degree at university. He probably worked secularly, I don't know, but what I heard is that he ran a business for quite a while. And then he and his wife went to SKE not so long ago, the School for Kingdom Evangelizers. And then they were assigned to Bethel to help with this local design and construction. And then a few years later, he's gone to Gilead. He's now on the branch committee. So his progression is not what people around the world would see in the organization. You don't see that happening in the UK or in the US or other parts of the world where somebody who has led this very secular life then ends up in the highest levels of the organization.
Yeah, I do remember Kena back at Hillcrest. And little did I know that his influence, I would feel it even after I left school and started working in a very interesting way. So I do remember that admiration we used to have for him and how naturally we would expect him to lead us in certain ways because he was so much of held in esteem, and at such a young age he had achieved so much in the organization. So he was quite an interesting mix to our experience at Hillcrest.
He really was. And your experiences with him were not particularly positive, particularly post Hillcrest. So maybe talk me through some of the difficulties you ran into with Kena.
So I do remember Kena with his close friend. I don't know, Kena now. For Kena, we can mention his name. Not trying to protect his identity, are we?
No. He's a Gilead graduate. He's a branch committee member. So these are the people we are trying to expose.
Okay. So it was only when I started work that I realized that there was more to Kena than meets the eye. Of course, in a negative way, because back at Hillcrest, we're just alive to he's such a good brother. He achieved so much. He's so spiritual. And of course, he had made it clear that he wanted to be in the full-time ministry. And that's what we knew. He was pursuing that course despite, pursuing secular pursuits. So could be that his secular pursuits were just a by-the-way thing while his real eyes were on, the full-time ministry, like we have seen in that video. So obviously that's what he was really targeting. But then through my boss, my boss was I started working at the Copper Belt University, and he did come also to CBU to some extent. I remember him being around CBU. I can't remember exactly the circumstances whether I was pursuing a program there, but I do remember him quite frequently as well at CBU. But I won't talk much about that. What struck me was when I started having issues with the organization, and of course, I had obviously personal weaknesses that I was working on at the time, and I would confide in the elders, but that's another story. But the one I want to talk about is where through my boss had all these businesses he was running, and one of them was running a water billing software, which
Right.
he had sold to a water billing utility that was in the eastern province. And then he started complaining about the guy who he had put there. And when he mentioned the name, I was like, say what? So the guy he mentioned was Kena. I was like, that boy is a problem. He is messing it up. So that was like a shock to me because knowing Kena who he was, like, okay,
Yeah.
first of all, why is he working with my secular boss on this project? And secondly, why is my boss complaining about him? So, from my perspective, of course, my boss, of course, has his own flaws, but it
Yeah.
was just shocking to hear so much negativity coming in about um, this kind of person. And he painted him in a different light. So I started seeing him in a different way. But then that was sort of, I didn't really look or think much about it. Like, hey, my boss talks so much negative about literally anyone. But
Yeah.
that left an impression on me saying, this person we're looking up to may not be as good as we think he is, you know? So that was a different perspective now I got. It's like, okay, so it emphasized the fact that even in the organization, despite what we put forward as good people, despite the facade we put up saying, we're pursuing Jehovah's will and we are the right people, ultimately we're just human beings and we have our flaws. And one of those that had flaws, definitely Kena Kunda. And interesting when you showed me that video, I was like, there's just something so affected about his appearance. Like, he doesn't have that, you know, kind of vibes I used to know. He's a bit, affected. Like, it's not really, I don't really think that's him in terms of him portraying his true personality and
It,
nature.
yeah, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
look,
feel that.
it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel natural. It feels very scripted. Yeah, very rehearsed. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah, even
that's
the facial expression
yeah, and
is
that's
too fixed.
yes, that is accurate, and that's very different because I think one of the things that was quite compelling about him when we were at Hillcrest was
Mhm.
he wasn't a particularly dynamic speaker like when he gave a talk or
Mhm.
things like that, but he was very natural. He was very
Yes.
much himself, and he had
Mhm.
this kind of like this appealing personality, but it's almost like that's
Yeah.
been kind of washed away because the organization want him to present in a certain way.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry to say, but I feel he's more or less like a puppet.
yeah,
Feels like a puppet.
yeah.
And I think maybe that's what happens to most people who do ascend upwards because you ultimately have to serve the organization and their will. And obviously, you tend to know more stuff than the ordinary. Maybe one of it could be the cognitive dissonance of realizing that this is just an organization, a profit making organization. I don't know. But with more knowledge, obviously, comes more cognitive dissonance.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So, that's kind of for me. From my perspective, I came to realize that he wasn't such a good person. You know, I'll mention it anyway. Through my boss, can you believe that? I had confided in the elders that I needed help with a personal issue, a personal weakness, and I think that was just one elder or two, can't remember exactly, that I had talked to. And Kena was nowhere in sight, mind you. And
He wasn't even an elder at the time, I
I
think.
don't know. But then my boss comes to tell me, he's saying, hey, look, I had a conversation with Kena. I just had to tell you this. I had a conversation with Kena, and he was asking me about you. I was like, okay. So he was saying, I think that's the time I had stopped being a witness. Yeah. So my boss was like, and I was saying, how's Michael? Has he stopped that bad habit? And I was like, okay. So what I had confided into the elders about was now coming from Kena. Mind you, this was shocking because I had confided in the elders, saying,
Yeah.
I need help with this personal issue. You know, I've been struggling with it for a while. Can you help me out? Yeah, I want to be a good Jehovah Witness, but obviously it's this. Now, imagine my shock where I'm hearing it from my boss, my secular boss, who's not a witness, through his conversation with Kena, who was not there and he wasn't an elder, telling my boss if I had overcome that bad habit I had or whatever personal issue I won't mention it there. So it was shocking to me, saying, what kind of organization is this? Firstly, Kena was not even among the elders that I had confided in.
Yes.
So that just threw off the integrity of the organization, saying, look, you confide in an elder and he spreads a personal issue. So he spread the personal issue to somebody who then in turn spreads that personal issue to a person outside the organization. I was like, this is the worst kind of possible person I could ever deal with, and the worst kind of organization that I could ever deal with.
That is
By the way,
wild.
my disfellowship, I was in disfellowship. I left. After, of course, that book I wrote about what if we are wrong and discovered we could be wrong, I had a conversation with the elders and I wanted to just share my findings with them. But obviously, they wouldn't hear of it. They was like, this guy is an apostate now, you know? They didn't want anything to do with it.
The A word.
But I was genuinely trying to put across saying, look, we have issues here and they need to be tackled. So, or they wanted to say, okay, so what are we going to do? What do you want us to do? I said, okay, you know what? I just want to step aside for a bit. I want to leave because have you ever noticed how if you're in a room and that room has a smell, you can't get it because you're in the room. You've been exposed to it, so you need to step outside for a bit. And when you come back in, you can then take the smell and say, oh, okay, this room has this certain type of smell. So that's the analogy I used. I said, look, I need to step out for a while. And if what my findings are really true, then I won't come back. But if I step out and I look at things from the outside and discover that, hey, you know what, we're right after all, I'll come back. So that's what I did. And I told them, hey, I need to go. Yeah. So I stepped aside because obviously one of the main reasons is that cognitive dissonance you have in the organization where if you don't believe even just one teaching, you really can't stay because you'll be forced to go out there and preach what you don't believe in.
Exactly.
You can't preach what you believe. Exactly. So for me, that was, I can't stay here because I can't be allowed to have a different viewpoint on one or two things. It has to be all or nothing.
Yeah.
So I stepped out, and can you believe the smell because of people like Kena?
Yeah. It amplifies it. It amplifies it, definitely.
It was the worst kind of feeling of betrayal. Because you're not hearing it, at least if I heard it from another witness, but I heard it from my boss.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell? So how many people know about my issue?
Yeah. And
this guy, my boss knows, and I confided in others. This is nonsense.
Yeah, so, and then for context as well, because we've spoken about this. This is not even a big thing, It wasn't even like it like you're doing anything to hurt anyone. It's just something that most people, I assume, who are even in the religion do. But because you had the courage to confide in the elders, you're then being treated like this. You're being your dirty laundry is being washed in public.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're all human, so we all have our shortcomings. But because obviously of the way you're raised, those shortcomings may not even be shortcomings, depending
Yes.
on the context of how you're looking at it, your upbringing, and all that. Yeah. So I felt betrayed. I felt this organization is the worst possible place to ever be. So that added to my to my not wanting to ever come back and do anything with the organization.
So
that,
at this point, when Kena was spreading this information to people who were not entitled to it, you had not yet disassociated.
I think when I started working, that was around 2013. I think I had.
Okay, you had this.
Because-
Nonetheless, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so nonetheless, it doesn't entitle him to do that. We can edit this out if it's not appropriate. But I think he also he also made some comments about your sexual orientation, from what I remember.
Yes. I think it's all documented in the book. If not, I'll just double check. I did. I may have written about it. I can't remember. But there are two books. One I have not yet published because I don't know. Publishing is not that easy. It may not be that lucrative. Yeah. But it's more like a personal account of my experiences as a witness. So I think it's a very good read for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. It more like just gives an account of how devoted I was to the organization and how ultimately that led to my downfall. So it's called The Messenger, and it's an account of my life experiences from Hillcrest to university and how I ended up being excluded. You see, Chakala, there's too much to say. Whole story. That has happened in the past. You can't say one podcast.
No.
But and I did write quite personal things in that book, and I think it's published on one of my publishing platforms called the Tushimi, but it's just local for Zambians. So if any of your readers would be interested, maybe I could make that book available because I feel it's got a lot of things which might help people to deal with the cognitive dissonance that brings about from the organization and the pursuit of secular. You're trying on the one hand to survive in this world, and on the other hand, the organization is pushing so much on you. So I could mention one of the things that I talked about with the elders was my experiences as a young person, where I was to some extent abused by cousins, where the things that we talk about. So that was just childish playing, but of course it used to weigh on my mind. So I talked about that, but then how that morphed into them thinking I was gay was quite weird. And how that came out from my boss. The conversation he had with me, I was like, these people have no confidentiality, they have no respect, they have so if this is truly Jehovah's organization, then I don't think it is, because I wouldn't expect people to behave in such an unloving and cruel manner.
No, absolutely not.
So that just underscored the fact that this is not at all a loving organization led by God. It's something else, something weird.
And I think part of it as well has to do with the cognitive dissonance that you've spoken about, because when the Jehovah's Witnesses are so convinced that this is the true religion, and when somebody leaves, and I remember when I heard that you were left, the shock that I had, especially because you were really, somebody I looked up to as somebody who was who knew the ins and outs of the doctrine, and to hear that you left. So you're always trying to find some kind of an explanation as to why this person has left. And then what then tends to happen is that people then start throwing insults at the individual. So the big one, of course, is the A word. They're an apostate. But in trying to find those explanations, then they start throwing others, speculation and other things that may be very offensive. So in your case, it was this like questioning your sexuality. So maybe if I was kind of like to play devil's advocate here, that is in Kena's mind and the other people he was colluding with. That was their way of explaining how Michael could leave the truth. Quote unquote the truth. But the thing is, I think on a bigger picture, and I'm glad we've spoken about this, I think this speaks to the kind of person that rises in this religion. So the people that rise in this religion are these people who have no principles, so to speak. These are people who do whatever they will say and do whatever it takes to rise in the organization. So in the case of Kena, he didn't mind backstabbing you, even to people who are outside of the religion, because that will make him look good in front of the elders. And this is why it's no surprise that he's risen to where he is now. So Kena, he's probably just about 40 now, or he's clipping 40, because he's not that much older than you and I. And he's on the branch committee already. And you have people who have slaved for the organization for decades in Zambia, and they've never made it to the branch committee. You see what I mean? So there is this aspect to his personality that has propelled him to those heights, and that's reflected in your story there.
Yeah, I see that. So sort of just shows us how the organization works and how really it really doesn't have our interests at heart. So whatever agenda they serve, I wouldn't really even bother delving into that. But I know it's not God's. It's some human interest, selfish interest somewhere along the lines. So that was my experience. And mind you, I just to speak to what you said about someone who knows the ins and outs, and ironically, that's what contributed. Because as somebody who has and has a keen interest in the truth, because for me it was always about the truth, and I was ready thinking, look, we have the truth, right? So everything else will just fall by the wayside. That is what led me to this path. Because when you are that much interested in the truth, and you're willing to learn as much as you can in order to defend the truth better, the truth always comes out in the end, because the cognitive dissonance of discovering this and that, especially if you, I mean, my background was I was very good at school, obviously, so obviously I could put facts together and start identifying anything that is not making sense to make my vision of what I feel should be right. So that's what happened to me. Through trying to defend the organization, you start noticing all these inconsistencies. And one of the things that struck me was how we always emphasize this name Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah. Let me get a bit preachy. Though I'm not really that preachy, because I question everything anyway.
You've been there, you've done it.
Yeah. I was a bit different from the average witnesses, because I would actually listen to what opposers are saying and try to establish some kind of common ground. And then from there, we'd have a conversation where I would ultimately lead them to show them that this is the truth. But that stopped working because I started noticing the inconsistencies. And one of which was Romans chapter 10, where we talked about he who calls upon the name of Jehovah will be saved, right? Yeah. So that should be 10 verse 13. Very prominent Bible verse. So when I was reading the Bible, I read that the whole context of Romans chapter 10, and then something just struck me. And I was, my jaw dropped, like, how? As I read, it's all about talking Jehovah. He who calls upon the name of Jehovah will be saved. Then in verse 17, it takes a bit of a twist and says, whatever, like it's saying, look, it's all about Jesus, right? Yeah. So salvation comes about by hearing the truth about who? Jesus.
Right.
I was like, wait. So this is saying it's about Jesus. Then while we're emphasizing Jehovah, then it says, the good news is through the preaching about Jesus. So even in their own Bible, they couldn't really hide that ultimately it was really about Jesus Christ. So
Right.
that for me was like, okay, so we've been wrong. We got to tell people who's your personal Lord, who's your savior, and people would say Jesus and be like, no, 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 it's Jehovah.
Yeah.
But when you look at Romans chapter 10, ultimately, if you read it, all of it is just talking
It's
about
talking
Jesus.
about Jesus. Yeah.
This is weird. So we
Mm-hmm.
have been stopping people, arguing with people about
Yeah.
something they're already right about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the scriptures that, yeah, just, took me off course, and I was like, damn, I think
Yeah.
we are absolutely wrong. This Jehovah they're talking about, this is actually Jesus. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we have replaced the name Jehovah wherever there was Adonai in the New World Translation sort of
Mm-hmm.
hides the actual truth. Why are
Exactly.
we trying so hard to mask the fact that salvation is in believing and calling upon the name of Jesus Christ?
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to just force people to um, talk about Jehovah. Of course, this is
Mm-hmm.
subjective, and there are many
Mm-hmm.
arguments about it. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to put this on anyone, but I'm just trying to open up the Pandora box, as it was, with people.
Mm-hmm.
There is an agenda here, and
Yeah.
it's not a good one, and they're
It's not.
masking something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when
that's
they actually, yeah, and you're right, when they put words that were not in the Bible, they insert them in there. For example, Jehovah does not appear in the entire New Testament. There is not a single manuscript of
yeah,
all the thousands of manuscripts that have been discovered of the New Testament where that
exactly.
word, that name Jehovah exists, but they've inserted it hundreds of times. I think it's like 236 times now with the most recent newer translation, and that is
Exactly.
crazy. That is crazy. Like, if Jehovah wanted
Mhm.
his name to be in the New Testament, would it have been difficult for him to make sure that the writers put it in there? But they've just brazenly and blatantly put it in there, like it's nothing. So that is quite shocking, I think.
It was shocking. Imagine me reaching the conclusion that Jesus is Jehovah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you can imagine from the perspective of the
Yeah,
Jehovah's Witness,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was mind numbing.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. So, look, Michael, I think what we need to do is because we're a bit over an hour now, so we need to come back because there's quite a lot more to talk about in terms of the experience. I think what we need to do in a future episode is to explore how where you got to in the organization, first of all, your higher education, how it was impacted by the organization, and how the wheels started to come off. And that's a whole other episode or two, I think, if you're open to that, we should really do
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
next
I
few weeks.
think so. I think it's something that we should talk about because my
Mm-hmm.
experience may not be unique to me,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it might help people out there, not just
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, but just generally people to just
Mm-hmm.
re-examine what we hold as true as human beings,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and start questioning um, this reality that we've been putting. Is
Mm-hmm.
this really what it is? So most
Mm-hmm.
of us just go about believing whatever comes our way,
Yeah.
but my experience has taught me that um, we need to question literally
Yes.
everything, not
Mm-hmm.
just religion, but even secular, whatever we're
Mm-hmm.
taught. Because as human beings, we have this curiosity, and somehow it's been dampened by the system. For
Yes.
me, right now, I do not pursue the witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you won't find me making videos about them because I believe um, they're just part of the problem,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
of what humankind is going through. So
Yeah.
for me, just focusing on them is more or less like just scratching a bit of a problem. The problem
True.
is much, much bigger. It's this
Mm-hmm.
whole world and this whole
Mm-hmm.
place we've been putting. So we
Mm-hmm.
need to keep on asking questions and trying to find answers and being curious. And that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately leads to true freedom because freedom is not an end goal that they tell us, but that constant willingness to discover and being free and unabated to
Mm-hmm.
have one opinion today and change it tomorrow because we're
Exactly.
constantly evolving human beings. So that's what I
Yeah.
encourage. let's not be static. Whatever people put on us, let's keep on questioning and asking. Today you may be, no, Jesus is God. Tomorrow you may be, you know what? I think we come from a Anunnaki or whatever race of, gods. So that's me now saying,
Being
constantly
open-minded.
and open-minded and willing to learn and explore whatever concepts out there. And that's where the fun is in being a human being.
Indeed. Very well said, Michael. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Michael. The very first episode of the JW Africa series. So what we will do is that we're gonna talk amongst ourselves, Michael, and we'll see what links we can put in terms of some of the publications you have produced. And I've read some of your works, which are really, really helpful. And so the viewers, you can find them in the description of this video. Please don't forget to like this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Anthony Morris Returns channel, and hopefully we'll be seeing Michael again in the very near future. So we'll see you next time on another video.
But you can't do that, said one of the critics.
It doesn't bother me.
Really? Again, really?
Look at that little enemy of God.
Somehow we dilly-dally takes us years, and we wonder why.
What are you waiting for?